Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. All of you prompt folks at noon Eastern, probably on your lunch hour. We appreciate you joining. We are gonna let folks have just another minute or so before we officially kick off our event today, but good to see people. In a little while since our last event, just over a month ago. So good to see folks. Just so folks know, I am going to have you on mute, other than our speakers, so that we can hopefully be giving them the floor when it's time for them to be doing their presentations.
Yeah, I'm just listening. They can't see me. I'm listening to a webinar.
Great. Okay. We have a good crew so far. I think we're going to have some more people joining us, but I don't want to wait too long before we get into the good content. And so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the Boston chapter of Conscious Capitalism and our event today. I'm excited for this event, and think you guys are in for a real treat to hear from our speakers today. Before I officially turn it over, I'm just going to share my screen for a couple of moments here to give everyone a bit of info about our event today. So we're here to hear from Jon Olinto, who's the CEO and co-founder of One Mighty Mill. And Julie Hall is going to be the one that's kind of facilitating us today. This is what I would say is the second in kind of a casual series of Julie being the interviewer of CEOs of conscious companies and being able to delve into various aspects of operations and leadership from CEOs on different aspects of conscious capitalism. And so it's a way for us to get some visibility into the ways that companies are operationalizing the tenets of conscious capitalism. So it should be fun. Just to set the stage for those who might not be familiar with the Boston Conscious Capitalism chapter, our purpose in Boston is to connect, educate, and inspire leaders and workers to consciously build businesses that positively impact the world. And our vision for accomplishing that is we will foster the fundamental transformation of capitalism to a healthy, balanced way of doing business for all people and the planet. I like to share that at the beginning of our events, just as a setting the stage for the work that we are all interested in doing. And so we're thrilled that you're joining us to learn about that today. Here's a list of the corporate members that we have in the Boston chapter. We thank all of these corporate members. I won't go through them by name, but I know we have some folks on the call today from some of our corporate members. So thank you for your continued support. And if you're interested in finding out more about being a member of Conscious Capitalism, whether at an individual member or at a corporate member level, feel free to reach out to me directly and I can provide that information for you. And then, oh, I forgot that was the last slide that I was going to share. So I will stop sharing my screen right now and I am going to hand the mic over to Julie Hall, who is CEO of Communitas. Thank you, Julie, for being our interviewer today. We're thrilled that you're going to be conducting this, and I will let you take it away.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm really excited to be here and really excited to introduce everybody joining us here today to Jon. At Communitas, we're really passionate about working with CEOs to help them excavate, operationalize, and then communicate what their purpose is. And if there's a CEO who embodies purpose more eloquently than Jon, I don't know many. Jon actually is the founder before One Mighty Mill, which we're going to talk about at length, but also one of my all-time favorite quick service restaurants, QSR or fast casual restaurants, called B.GOOD, which started in 2004, so almost about 18 years ago. He started B.GOOD with his childhood friend, which I want to talk a little bit about because I find that fascinating that he and Tony started B.GOOD and One Mighty Mill together. So what is it like to create a purposeful business with someone that you've known most of your life? I think we could probably write a book on that. So joining us today, Jon, I'm going to see your face while we're talking, is Jon Olinto, who's the founder and CEO of One Mighty Mill. And there's Jon right there. Behind him, many racks that need to be filled with your brand new, just launched fresh sliced bread, right?
Yep, fresh out of the oven onto the shelves and then at a grocery store near everybody on this call, I hope.
Right. And the end caps at my Whole Foods here are amazing. And it seems to be flying off the shelves. I had the great pleasure of visiting Jon and his team at the mill in Lynn and was just so completely blown away by the process that he has unearthed and, essentially excavated to bring forth to really reintroduce this whole idea of fresh milling to the industry. We've been eating flour that has been so industrialized since the Industrial Revolution that I think it's lost a lot of the nutrients, but I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to first, in addition to introducing you, Jon, I want to ask you a little bit about how you came up with the idea for One Mighty Mill and how you see the connection between One Mighty Mill and what was so successful. I mean, at one point you had over 70 units of B.GOOD throughout the country, right? So walk us a little bit through that timeline of what it was like to be a successful founder of a very intense, I know the fast casual QSR business is extraordinarily intense, but moving from that into One Mighty Mill, well, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is one wouldn't have happened without the other. So there's no way that One Mighty Mill would have ever existed if it hadn't been for our journey, really trying to build local food systems with B.GOOD. And so I think to step back so everybody understands what B.GOOD was supposed to be or how it evolved is that when we started in 2004, Anthony, who's my best friend and co-founder of B.GOOD, we defined the opportunity for B.GOOD around this idea of making fast food real. And so to us, this is 2004 is a long time ago. It's like, you have to remember, there was no Sweetgreen, there was no Dig In, there was Chipotle hadn't come to Boston, Panera was just coming here. And so the fast casual market, the landscape didn't really exist, or it definitely hadn't been matured. And so there wasn't like this understanding of farm to table yet. And so the way we thought about it was real, making fast food real meant taking a traditional fast food menu and making everything from scratch. So make it homemade, make it in our restaurants every day. And so that included things like grinding our own beef to make our burgers, cutting our own potatoes to make fries, baking those fries instead of frying them, making veggie burgers homemade every day. And then it just that approach translated across the menu. And after about 2 years of really like living in the restaurant, we challenged our own definition of real. And so we started to learn more about food because we approached this like we were very inexperienced when we started. And we started to ask questions about real, if real burgers, if they were still real, if we were grinding beef that was raised on a factory farm and shot with antibiotics and hormones. And I think when we decided that we wanted to solve that question, that it pushed us down this path of more transparency, and real took on this new dimension of knowing where it came from and knowing how food was raised. And so that led us to the first relationship we started was with this co-op up in Maine called Pineland Farms. We started sourcing all our beef from Pineland. It was all natural meat, so it was it didn't have hormones and antibiotics. But even more, we got to go to Maine and meet farmers and ranchers. And then we started buying our produce, at different farmers markets, some in Copley, some out in like Arlington, and would drive a van, would pick up direct. And then that just kind of transferred across the entire menu. And so, and I don't want to spend too much time on this first question, but I do think it's important to do the setup. So, you know, we did that basically like with 2 restaurants, because we had our first restaurant in Boston, then we opened in Harvard Square, and that's kind of where we identified, or really like had this moment where we wanted to really figure out what we stood for. And so real to us changed. And then we went on this journey, and it took us forever to figure out, you know, how do we take our entire menu and plug it into a real supply, like know where it came from. And we did it with bakeries, and we did it across the entire East Coast, where we'd create these new regional supply chains or local supply chains of producers. And we always had a baker that made, you know, our buns for our veggie burgers and turkey burgers. But the story at the bakery level always it started and ended with the baker. And so, you know, the best example, I think most everybody's here from Boston. So we used to source our buns for New England at Quinzani's Bakery. It's in the South End. It's the closest bakery to our Back Bay restaurant where we started, which was basically in the South End. It was on Dartmouth Street. We could walk there. That was like the bakery we wanted to work with. That was local to us. But the idea of never thinking about flour, never thinking about a farm connected to a bakery, and also running a business where transparency was paramount to the consumers that we served and to our employees and to us. But we never considered that question. And then at the same time, we watched as this kind of gluten became kind of an unknown thing, but also like it became the enemy. We watched our menu shift. We were ahead of the curve where we sourced gluten-free buns, and we would have a totally different process to serve people who are gluten intolerant or celiac. But mostly like we watched food attitudes change over those 14 years or whatever, how many years I was there, where, you know, we went from the world felt great about burgers and veggie burgers and baked fries to 10 years later, people wanted kale and quinoa bowls and salads, and they didn't really want, they didn't want to eat a whole lot of burgers or buns. And so, you know, when it was this time to leave B.GOOD, I had been kind of, I really wanted to understand why we didn't know anything more about that lack of transparency at the bakery level.
Yeah, you really were sort of an early adopter. You know, 18 years ago, you're right, there was no sweet green. There really wasn't a movement around clean eating. And I think during that time, I want to say probably like 7 years ago, Grain Belly came out, right? That watershed book about, you know, the evils of gluten and the processed flour industry and what gluten does to your body. And when I look now at what you're doing and what you're building, you're going, I have seen this in a couple of the articles, going against the grain. You really are creating the infrastructure to shift an entire industry, right? So are you an early adopter here too? Are you starting to see, I know that you were out at one of the industry shows on the West Coast last week, you know, are you seeing a return to really the roots of agriculture? I know there's a lot going on with plant-based meats, and there's a lot of movement in that, but as a food marketer, we see many of these companies crop up and then get bought by PepsiCo, right? Or get bought, in which I spent a lot of time working with the big food companies, the General Mills, the McDonald's of the world. And as soon as, you know, especially with General Mills, we'd buy a food company and we'd keep the marketing the same because that's what made it special. But the entire infrastructure around how the product was made was fundamentally changing. How are you warding against this, and how are you recreating this infrastructure for what's coming next? Because clearly you're seeing ahead of everyone else.
Well, thank you. I think we are tiny in the world of wheat and flour, and I have to say, well, two things. I'll tell you about how we're building, I hope, our resistance to industrial food and fighting back and hopefully standing up for local food systems. But I think first, the question about what are we seeing in the industry. So I was just out at this thing called Expo West, which is like the Natural Food Summit. And I got to say, there's nobody's milling flour or talking about organic wheat. It's the opposite. Everybody's moving further towards, I think, processed kind of meat alternatives. And I don't I don't know if that's a good thing. I really believe that clean, simple food is what we're supposed to eat. And I think if we mess with it too much, then we get ourselves into trouble, both our health and our environment. And so I'm not sure we need 200 new brands raising capital to make another piece of like a fake chicken nugget.
I agree with you. Yeah.
But I do see that as where a lot of the energy and a lot of the capital is going. And I just think it feels like it's the same thing happening over and over again, whether it's fake chicken or gluten-free or whatever the trend is. You just there's just a lot of interest and a lot of energy that's put into it, and a lot of marketing dollars that I think goes into hopefully what seems like confusing consumers, or at least getting them to jump on that trend until the next trend pops up. But hopefully, like, we got to stay optimistic, and hopefully there's some real good change that comes out of all this. I will say the way we think about change is it's actually not change. It's about going back to the old way. And so it's really looking back like 150 years and understanding that, everybody talks about local food systems and the importance to community and healthy food and environment, especially sustainability right now. And so, the whole thing is that you have to undo all the industrialization that's happened. And I didn't, trust me, like we as a team, we didn't know any of this, like coming out of B.GOOD. It was like nobody knows anything about this. It's because wheat and flour and stone mills haven't existed in our country for 150 years. So like, it's not a part of our consciousness. It's not even a part of our parents' consciousness, really. And so you can't expect people to like even have a relationship with this ingredient or this crop, because nobody's ever seen it and it's invisible. Right. Even like if you think about our relationship as consumers to flour, there is no relationship. It's like a dead thing that lives in our pantry, and occasionally we'll go in and grab a couple cups of it, but there is no like. But then juxtapose that against how we think about like eggs and how much information there is about the supply chain and the way the animals are treated. And when we were developing our plan, we looked a lot at like craft beer, coffee, and chocolate in terms of commodities that have kind of been romanticized, but also brought back to these local or regional food systems. Coffee obviously is not a domestic crop, but just the way that these brands have been built and kind of the core values of the companies themselves. So,
and you mentioned,
so our approach,
go ahead.
So our approach is, like I said, go back to the old way and bring back kind of this lost food system. So the way we learned is the first farmer we worked with was an organic farmer up in Maine. He taught us kind of everything we needed to know about how to grow organic wheat, how to build kind of like a life around regenerative agriculture and sustainability. And then we got really lucky. There's the last stone mill builder in the United States happens to live in northern Vermont. And so we got schooled by two of the like real OGs of local wheat, local flour, local food systems with, an old school organic wheat farmer and a stone mill builder. So that's kind of the fundamental of how we learned about what we needed to do to kind of fulfill a mission.
And I love the story about how when you identified the stone builder in Vermont, you called, you emailed, you texted, not hearing from him, you just got in your car and you drove to his house. So that's fantastic. And seeing that mill live in person is really a sight to see. It is truly amazing when you think that back in Christ's time, things like this were used to make wheat, and it's really something. I want to make sure that we talk about, you talked about the importance of community, and that's one of the things that I think really sets you apart, and what to me as a conscious capitalist is so appealing. This Northeast Grain Shed Alliance that you're a part of, that you really kind of created. I read an interview with Tony, your best friend and business partner, talking about that. But when Kelly and I were going through and looking at One Mighty Mill and you as a guest, we were really astounded at how you checked every single one of the boxes. And that's very rare when you look at companies. You're purpose driven, you're values led, you're so focused on stakeholders and your shareholders and how you're answering to them. And also when you look at, ESG is very sexy and popular right now. I mean, you really hit pretty much everything underneath that E bucket, that S bucket, and that G bucket. So my question to you, if you could talk us through a little bit, you talked about how important it was to you that you set the purpose down and wrote the values of the organization before you even started the company. Can you talk a little bit about that and what drove you to do that?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of probably One Mighty Mill is that unlike B.GOOD, I'm older. Maybe I'm not old, but I'm definitely older. And I think you learn as you go. I think the entrepreneurial journey is you got to learn every single day because you make mistakes, and obviously you're always taking risks. But I think the beauty of B.GOOD at times was that it was an extension of a friendship. So Anthony and I, when we started B.GOOD, like I said, we were very it was very personal, and I think when you make food, especially in a fast casual in a restaurant, like you see like instant gratification because you serve people, you have real relationships with your team, and you realize like how important it is to, I think, make people's lives a little bit better by the food you serve, and you don't really want to you don't want to hurt people. So I think in that business especially, you feel kind of even more compelled to try to do the right thing, or at least I think we did. And also, everything you do, it kind of comes back to your relationship and the way that your friendship. And so your identity is very kind of intertwined with the brand itself. And so you take the failures personal and you take the wins personal. And so I think that was an important piece of I think why we were successful. And we never talked once about culture, about mission, about values. It was just like this. I mean, I don't think you do that stuff when you're 20. I think we were like 25, 26. I think you're just not smart enough because you haven't built a business before. And it's just like an organic thing that happens, and through osmosis, or just being, it's contagious. Like, I think you spend enough time with your team and in the restaurants, then people start to behave the way you want them to, or the way you do. And so there was no formal mission statement written down. There was a clear point of difference and a clear brand approach, which was totally intertwined with mission. And I think it allowed us to build a really powerful culture, which was really an extension of the values that we cared about personally. But as we grew and as we scaled in different regions, I think we broke down a little bit because we didn't have that systematized mission, core values. And you wonder why, like, we'd open in a different part of the country and we couldn't be there like we were in Boston and New England, and we didn't have necessarily like those original team members to go down there and to kind of like install or transplant that soul of the business. And it's inevitable. The culture gets diluted, that flows down to the team member and all the way to the consumer. And that's not to say B.GOOD wasn't a success. It's just over time that's inevitable, and that just happens. And so I think when we started One Mighty Mill, we identified that as a potential weakness. And so the first thing, before we even identified the products, I think the overriding idea was that we were going to fix flour, and that was going to have a positive impact on people. And then from there, it was imperative that we wrote a mission statement and wrote the core values, because as you get older, you think more about kind of the enduring legacy of what you want to build, especially after having a run in food previously. And so we were very disciplined in that approach. And so before we signed a lease, before we started milling any flour, we did have those we had those kind of core to the business to kind of keep us focused on what we knew was going to be most important over the long haul.
One of the most challenging things, I think, for a conscious leader or conscious led organization to do is to ensure that all of their stakeholders share the same values. You're now, and I think through this Grain Shed Alliance too, I mean, you've got hundreds of farmers and partners. So how can you ensure or learn from, the others to make sure that you're aligned in purpose? What are some ways you do that?
Well, so just to clarify the grain shed, so we source directly from 5 organic farmers, and our supply chain is not 100% from the Northeast. It can't be. So our supply chain started in Maine at one organic farm. We also have a farm in upstate New York, and then Illinois and Montana. And so that is the supply chain. I think we learn from everybody. I do think way beyond the grain shed. I would push back and say that we took so much from those founding relationships, in terms of our first farmer in Maine is a guy named Matt Williams, and he and his daughter run it's in Linnaeus, Maine. They run Aurora Farms. And so we knew nothing about organic wheat agriculture. Didn't know about healthy crop rotations, anything. And so when we realized that we were going to outgrow Maine as a supply chain partner, we wanted a way to see if we could kind of systematize what they did, which we felt in our heart was like so right and so core to what we wanted to build. So that we went to them and asked them for how do they define sustainability and regenerative agriculture, and how can we codify their own standards and then share that. So we develop with them what we call our supply chain standards. And then we use that as a tool for any new farmer that we contract with. And then in terms on the flour side, so the last stone mill builder in the United States is this guy named Andrew Hine. He's in Elmore Mountain, Vermont. It's in just into the Northeast Kingdom, and he, he's like I almost want to say he's like a reserved capitalist. Like this guy is like the smartest. He's like the smartest. He has the whole vision, so he's a baker by trade. He started building mills because he wanted to source wheat from Vermont for his bakery with his wife and make bread to feed his community. It's that kind of spirit and that vision that we really want to bring to a national level. But there's so many times we go back to him to make sure that we're doing things the right way, all the way to not beyond milling. We'll go to him with questions on baking, partners with our supply chain, and also just how do we best tell the truth about what we're doing, because there's no better source than the person that builds the actual stone mills themselves.
Right. That authenticity is so important. And I do want to talk about the community aspect of it, because in addition, you're doing some great, incredible things and giving back to the community and feeding Boston school children. And I want you to talk about that. But I also am fascinated, and I want you to tell the audience a little bit about the infrastructure that you're building within each community. That not only are you created this company, but you're creating the infrastructure in each community to actually give jobs to the community around educating them and teaching them on this ancient process. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, for sure. So the way we started is, the mission of One Mighty Mill is to bring back local food systems that help communities be healthy and thrive. And so from that mission, we identified our fulfillment, number one, to build stone mills. And so we've built our first stone mill in Lynn, downtown Lynn, which is where I'm at right now. And then we found, the closest source of organic wheat at scale for us at the time was Matt Williams up in northern Maine, Matt and Sarah Williams. We also identified downtown Lynn because we believe that to bring back local food systems that help communities be healthy and thrive, we didn't want to just serve fresh mill flour to people who shopped at the natural organic grocery stores, primarily places like Whole Foods and Roach Brothers, and which are amazing retailers. And where we knew we were going to have to build our business, but also we knew that was going to leave out some people that we wanted to make sure we could feed. And so we identified downtown Lynn as a way to build a mill in a community where we could have an impact. We could serve a community. And so we have a retail part of our mill that's open. And then we also were able to create a relationship with the Boston Public Schools to serve, to be a part of this new program at the time. This was back in 2018. So, like 3.5 years ago, pre-COVID. there was some work being done to bring new cafeterias retrofitted inside the schools, focused at the schools in closest proximity to food deserts. And so we jumped onto that project, and we were lucky to be a part of that. And so we signed on to to serve 10 schools in the city. And we actually were able to use that starting date. So September 6th was the first day of Boston Public Schools back in 2018. And we used that as kind of the starting date to open our mill. And really we were able to rally kind of our community, our investors, and everybody else around getting things accelerated so that we could make sure that kids were the first people to eat our fresh mill bagels. And so that, I guess that whole entire approach at the starting point, which was stone mill, local organic wheat, and feeding hopefully people beyond those people at those natural organic grocery stores. That was kind of the hardwired into what we wanted to do. We knew it was going to be really hard. And that's kind of the approach of how we've thought about scale. So, fast forward from 2018, we were able to build 3 more mills in Boston. So we built those in Hyde Park, added some more farms. We weren't able to do that in New England just because of the lack of wheat. And then recently in December, we built 3 more in New York and connected it to an organic farm upstate in Penn Yan, New York. And now we got to find a school. Hopefully we'll do that. But we were able to add Lynn Public Schools and Springfield Public Schools, Springfield, Mass, which represents a lot of kids. A lot more than what we started. And we just got the opportunity actually in the last 30 days to go to the West Coast to start selling in 2 regions of Whole Foods in California. And so that has accelerated our plan, and we'll be building 3 more stone mills, probably in Northern California. And there's tons of wheat out there. So that'll be easy to build that supply, or not easy, but it'll be easier to build the organic supply chain out there. And so we'll be doing that in this year, 2022. So that's the model. It's just, you have to do it region by region.
Yeah, and build the mills, right? So that's got to be a big undertaking of actually, does Matt in Vermont have to come on site and bring all of his stuff? Are you able to find other suppliers?
Yeah, no, he's the only show in town. So he builds them. It's really cool what he does. So he sources everything from his own little ecosystem up there, and then he travels and does the install. But the stones themselves, you saw them, Julie. So they're 1,200-pound stones. They sit horizontally. So the mills themselves are about 5,000 pounds each, and we've figured out over the evolution of One Mighty Mill that we can be super efficient if we string them 3 together. And then we've added, over the last few years, we've been able to add a lot of automation to it. So there's like a pneumatic system, which, it's a gravity fed system that allows the grain to be dropped directly onto the stones. And then there's a pneumatic system that uses, like a vacuum to pull all the flour through and get it filtered. So we have to keep getting better, and we have to.
I can't wait until you're able to fund a study on, the health benefits also. I know it's a whispered rumor, but that people who have celiac disease and haven't been able to eat wheat actually can eat your products just fine. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
That's not true? Oh, no.
Celiac, people that have celiac disease are allergic to gluten. And so our products have gluten, but, gluten is not the enemy. It's the industrialization of flour and wheat that's turned it into junk food. And so what we absolutely have seen is that people who have sensitivities or who have any reaction to gluten or flour or bread, they almost always are okay eating our products. I think the best thing I'm sure everybody on this call has heard about people going to Europe and saying, "Oh, I went to Europe and I eat all the bread I want." And so that's absolutely the same as what we see either in Lynn at our retail operation or in grocery stores. But yeah.
Oh, good. I'll have to make sure that I correct myself. It's not celiac. Okay, but the idea is the same, that people can eat it, just like when you travel.
Yeah, so, just celiac is like a true allergy. So people.
Okay. All right. You've got 14 what you call employee owners currently at the moment, right? And how do you structure that? You did say that together every year you collectively look to measure against your mission and your values with those employees. You mentioned something earlier, I think is an important point, scaling. How do you scale values? How do you scale mission and make sure that that's a part of growth? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that there's one thing to write a mission statement and hang it up. I think everybody does that. And then I think there's another thing to make it real and to instill it into the way that your team thinks about it. And the only way you can do that is to hold yourself accountable to report back on what the mission means to performance. And so what we do every year, and we've done this since the beginning, is that on the anniversary of when we opened the mill, so September 6th, 2018, we send a report out, much like other companies, an impact report. I think ours are different because we have the same standards that we set at the beginning that we report back every single year. And so, the first one is all about organic acreage. So, as growers, as a stakeholder, to think about the impact we're having on the organic side, to source more organic wheat, and also the piece about local, there's a part of our supply chain standards is local first is the first one. And so, to build back local food systems, you got to find wheat close to the mills and close to the bakery. That is a true local food system. And so we report back, we're transparent with that every single year. The second one is, you can't bring back local food systems the way we think we need to without building stone mills. And so our goal is to create an amazing company with awesome products that drive more demand on the consumer and retailer side. So it gives us the opportunities to enter new regions and to build more stone mills. So, we went from 1, now we're up to 7. And then at the end of this year, we'll be up to at least 10 when we open the 3 up in in California. Third metric, the third one is about, like you had said, it's about is creating employee owners. And so we have about 20 full-time employees, 14 of them have equity in the company. The rule is if you're a full-time team member, so Kenneth, come on over. So if you're a full-time team member and you work 40 hours a week for 1 year, that you receive an equity grant in the company, and it will vest over a trimester. This is Kenneth. The light's
Hi.
not great.
Nice to meet you.
Kenneth's an amazing miller. He's been with us for like a year and a half, so he just received a grant. This was not scripted, obviously. He was just walking down here. But yeah, so Kenneth is an example of one of those team members, so that's something we're really proud of. And then the last piece is about this, that idea of that help communities be healthy and thrive, which is that second part of our mission statement. You could just say like, well, if you put healthy food out there, you're helping communities because you're improving their lives through healthy food. But I think what we wanted to make sure is that in 10 years, if this thing's really successful, we don't just feed people that look like me or my family, And so that led us to using kind of our work at the schools to, in the schools we're at are in places that they wouldn't have fresh mill flour. So Lynn and in Springfield, Mass. And so we measure the number of bagels or tortillas that we produce and serve to those kids. And then we report on that, and it has to keep growing, or else we don't, we're not kind of inspiring our internal team members or our other stakeholders, including retailers who support us. And so that is the way we approach mission and accountability and measurement.
That's fantastic. And I love that, the equity grant process. I'd love to explore more about that, because I think that when you talk about scaling values and scaling purpose, that is, they're disciples essentially. And when they feel they have an ownership stake in the business and that they'll be, sharing the good word and preaching what you are preaching, that's how you do it. That's fantastic.
Cool, thanks.
I want to give some time for questions. Kelly, we've got about 20 minutes left. Do we want to open up questions for the group?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're open to, if you have questions, feel free to pop them into the chat and we can ask the questions to John. Or if you're interested in not typing it out, I'd be happy to unmute you if you want to raise your hand and ask a question that way. So either way is fine, but feel free.
And I
to-
can keep asking questions too, because I've got many more if we need to. But I did want to make sure that people felt like they had a chance to raise their hand if you're familiar with the Zoom process, or just put a question in the chat. Either or, we can pull you up on screen if you like. So I'll keep going. I mean, the pillars that we have as a part of conscious capitalism is, higher purpose, conscious leadership, conscious culture, and stakeholder focus. I mean, the conscious leadership part, it seems like you and Tony really do have down pat, and I'd love for you to, do you think that it's the fact that you've known each other for so long and that you have these shared values? It's much like a marriage, right? I think in having a successful partnership, you have to have those shared values. And how does that extend into the partners, the employees that you hire? How do you bring that forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I do think there so much goes back to history. I think maybe it's less about how it translates down to our team, but more about every business founding team has fights, or they disagree, or there's stress. There's times when you think you're going to fail, and sometimes you think you're going to be like huge success. And I think having the background of been through it before, and knowing at the end how each other are going to behave, and that we actually have each other's back in the very end, I think that changes. I think the ability to get through those tough times, because no matter what, there's going to be disagreements. And so I think the way that you're able to kind of move past those disagreements, having history, I think it gives you that advantage that is, in a lot of ways, it's a huge advantage to starting a company.
It's a testament to you both. I mean, to have started two businesses together and to be, it's like a work marriage, right? It really is.
Yeah.
So we do have a couple of questions that have come in.
Yes.
The first one, John, I think it's interesting this hearing you have employee ownership as a part of your company, or an option for full-time folks after a year. And this is coming on the heels of our last event, was actually focused specifically on an employee ownership model as a one way of executing on a conscious capitalism way of doing business. And so we had Harpoon speak, and a couple other worker co-op companies that were on there. And so would love just to hear a little bit more about your employee ownership program as well, and elaborate on that, how that came to be, and why that's part of your model, and how that works.
So just to clarify, we're not an ESOP.
Great.
Understood. You raise capital, and we have a whole bunch of outside investors, but we always allocate, even we're raising a Series B round now, and we'll allocate a pool that'll be just for our team. And I think and they're stock grants, so there's no options. People don't buy it. It's an award that you earn. And depending on your level in the organization, obviously it's going to be tiered. I think two things about it are, most companies, I think, would keep their pool for senior leadership. But I think what we've done is we've made it clear that we have this program in place. And so we attract instantly people that understand that coming in, right? That their grant may not be as big because we're committed to making sure everybody's an owner. Where it stemmed from was, the core value of one of our core values is build a team that's family. And so it's all about, if me and Tony win, then we want everybody else to win with us as we grow this thing. And so, our the woman named Marina, so she's from Lynn, and English is definitely a second language for her. She received stock grant, literally like the stock started clicking for her on our first day that we opened the mill. So she received equity when it was worth really a lot less than it is now. And really that started kind of us on that process. So it was just, I think it was a part of the way we felt like we could systematize our core values into kind of the growth of our company. I'm happy to talk about like the mechanics of it, but I don't know if that's necessary.
The person asking is my dad, so he would actually be very interested, and I can tell you that. However, maybe in the interest of the whole group, we can move on to a couple other questions, and if we have time, we can come back, because I do think it would be interesting to know that, and I know that he would want to know. The next two questions, I think I'll actually pair them. How do you feel your purpose and mission impacts your profitability? And then you can maybe supplement that answer with the kind of longer term vision, and where do you think that you'd like to see your model get you to in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, I think that profitability question is a really loaded one, because I think so if we wanted to use industrial flour to make our company, the number one, the company wouldn't exist, because we never would have started it. And honestly, like I don't understand what the point of differentiation would be at grocery stores to win. The world does not need more bagels or bread. Go to Market Basket and go look at what they call the bread wall. And like, I'll tell you what, nobody should make any more bread. That thing is literally jam packed. So I would say that there's ways to be more profitable in what we're doing, but it's not an option. I think there's a path to much better margins for our company. And it's interesting because the only way you can really become profitable in this game is to have mills next to bakeries, next to farms, because it eliminates basically all of the logistics and the freight that you need. And so you can become really profitable at scale once you actually build to the ultimate kind of platform that we're talking about. But along the way, it doesn't look pretty. So we've already created huge efficiencies by opening those 3 mills in New York and having a farm close to us and being right next to our bakery in New York. Like huge efficiencies. And that's only taken hold in the last really 60 days. And so we can already see how that's going to affect our gross margin. So I do think that, yeah, that's a hard question.
Yeah, and if you kind of extend that then to looking at, 5 years from now, paint a picture for us of kind of what you're doing and how your vision kind of you'd like to see it materialize.
Yeah, so the good thing is that the California opportunity did 2 things. Number one, it gives us this ability to really grow our top line in an exciting way and faster than expected for 2022. It also accelerated the move to build more mills in California, but it also has required this accelerated capital raise. So we're raising money now that's earlier than we thought we would, because we need the cash to build out California, not just the mills, but also the team and the ability to support those stores out there. And so as a part of that, we need to raise money kind of for the larger vision and convince or at least have that plan, 5-year plan to show to our investors. And so how it looks is it has 5 regional mills. So it has obviously New England, New York, California, Rocky Mountains, and Midwest. And then it has us plugged into about 60 organic farmers that cluster really that are within those regions. I think when you get a mill in California in the Rocky Mountain and even Illinois, you're talking about accessibility to organic wheat that in New England is probably the worst place you could start a fresh mill flour business. And so the margins and kind of the logistics, they do improve as you move west. So.
Is that because of the soil, John? Is that because of just the topography here?
Yeah, I mean, the soil, a lot of it is actually, so New England, Maine used to be the breadbasket of New England. There's tons of opportunity. But when it all, industrialization moved all that wheat to the Midwest. And then it's about, most of it is about climate. So, what they call high protein wheat, it does best in kind of some colder climates. And so that's why you see like Montana, North Dakota, those states produce really strong wheat. But the interesting thing is that there's actually a ton of organic wheat in California too, which is almost kind of desert wheat, but we can use that in some of our formulas. So
you're almost sort of the opposite of agritech in some ways, right? Because I mean, a big giant, multi-1,000-pound mill is not exactly big stone is not exactly quote unquote tech. It's bringing old tech back, right? Do people
Absolutely.
mention that at all?
No, but I felt it when I was in that food show.
Yeah.
I felt like it was two things. Number one, I felt like awkward because I didn't feel like I felt like I didn't belong there. But at the same time, it was kind of refreshing because, hey, like there's a shot here because nobody else is doing this. And so we have a head start for sure. So
it's that example of
we're really stupid.
Yeah.
Really
Go
stupid.
ahead.
Or either we're really stupid or we're really smart. I don't know.
No, you know how they always say with entrepreneurs, when everybody else zigs, you zag. So I think that you're onto something for sure.
Yeah, hopefully. Well,
we got another question too, I think here. Let's see. Curious to hear more about John's leadership journey. I don't think an organization like this comes to be without a leader's growth and evolution. What happened in John's journey that developed the commitment that he has to build this kind of conscious business? It's a great question.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So I think that so one thing happened that was really important, which was when I got to leave B.GOOD, I got a year where it was really lucky. I got paid for a year, and I couldn't compete with the company, and I really couldn't hire anybody from within the company. And so it gave me this time where I got to really think, and I got to really explore and really almost design what I thought would make me really, I thought it would make a big difference, but also like really motivate a team. And I think that gave me the advantage to do something that I think was very thoughtful, and to also kind of evaluate where I was at in my life and what I could pull together with an amazing team. I also think that I think when you leave a business that you started, it makes you really reflective on the things that you love, the things that you would have done different. And I think that gives you insight into how you want to start over. And the beauty is, like, if you get a year, so I was like 42, so I was old enough to know, and mature enough, I think, to improve and do some kind of self-reflection, but also because of B.GOOD, we also had the ability to go out and raise more capital to kind of give our vision a chance. And so, I think that was the core. I guess in terms of like the mission piece, couple big takeaways from B.GOOD wasn't just that mission, systematizing it and in measuring it was going to be really important to create, I think, enduring value for both the brand, for the team, and for I think our own personal motivation and reason to continue to want to get after it every single day. But I think the other piece was when we started, the mission of making fast food real was like super inspiring, because like I remember we thought we were like building the anti-McDonald's, and like we were gonna like, we were taking down Ronald McDonald, who was like making people unhealthy. And I think over time, even as that, like I started like that, the idea of real change to be like transparent, front to table, whatever you thought about the way we positioned it. But I do think we saw at the end that like we found this blueprint of like, you want to put B.GOODs next to like Lululemons and Apple stores and Whole Foods, and you just do that over and over again. And for me personally, by the end, I started to think that we weren't really changing the game anymore. Like, because I think, like fast casual, healthy fast casual came on the scene pretty hard. There were plenty of places to go get a healthy $12 salad. And so I remember kind of at the end feeling like I wanted that feeling again, like I had at the beginning, which was very like, like inspiring. And so that was, I think, core to the way we thought about change and impact on the One Mighty Mill side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like you picked an aspect of it and really went deep with it, for sure. And I think that the real differentiator, as I can see it, is the infrastructure that you're building, the community part of it. I mean, we do knock McDonald's. They were a client of mine for a long time, and I was always astounded at they did scale values, and for them, value was community. They had a good neighbor program where every franchisee in the country was charged with really within a 3 mile, they called it the 3 mile rule, this 3 mile radius. They were to be, a part of the community, the little league team, the knitting club, the reading groups, like they were supposed to really be supporting that. And what you're building, not only from bringing back an ancient way of creating food, you're also bringing the community in to help build that and be a part of it. And I think that that's really outstanding.
Thanks. I don't think I would applaud McDonald's for building playgrounds when they were serving 32-ounce Cokes.
I know. It was a different world. It was a different world.
That was their penance. So I hope somebody's not saying that about One Mighty Mill someday. Like, hey,
no, you're very different.
You guys fed some kids to school. Yeah.
It is it's been a journey for them too. I worked with them in the 90s, so it was a long time ago. We always showed this video of all of Los Angeles burning to the ground except for the McDonald's restaurants during the LA riots, because they were considered a pillar of the community. So I've probably brainwashed.
Yeah, no, the franchisees are amazing. I don't mean to disparage anybody.
Awesome. Well, we're down to just our last minute, so I just think I'll draw us to a close. Jon and Julie, thank you so much. Jon, I learned a lot, so thank you for sharing your story. Very inspiring, and I am sure that the other business leaders that are on here today took away a lot of good material. So really appreciate it. And the very last thing that I'll mention before I officially say goodbye to you all is in the chat, I'll just put 2 links for you. The next Boston Conscious Capitalism event is going to be on May 4th. The event should be a good one. It's going to be Deepening Roots, Addressing the Great Resignation by Creating Belonging. And so we'll have a couple of speakers on that to be giving us some good info. So go ahead and RSVP to that. It'll be another virtual event. And then we'd love to hear your feedback on today's event. So I also included a link to a survey, and you can give us your thoughts and ideas and questions if you have any. Thank you so much, Jon. Thank you, Julie, for hosting us. Really appreciate it. Jon, any final words that you wanted to say?
Just get out there and buy some fresh milled bread, bagels, tortillas, pretzels, buy all of it, please. We need every bit of support. So go to Whole Foods in New England, go to Market Basket, go to Roach Brothers, go to our website. Let's make it rain.
Good stuff. Great stuff. It's fantastic bread and tortillas. They're my kids' favorite tortillas. Are really good.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Jon.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Jon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.